Welcome back. You're watching Sport on Primetime. Now the nominations process for the 2016 Gsport Awards is open. It's an annual awards ceremony that recognizes women in all spheres of sport. And for the next 5 weeks, you, the public, are called to put forward who you think has excelled. My guest tonight is Kass Naidoo, founder of Gsport. Kass, welcome to the show.
It's good to be with you.
Right. Now, this is into its second decade, Gsports. This awards, it's necessary in our industry and in sport in general.
I think it's important to recognize people who are doing well. And I think particularly with women's sport, there's not enough recognition that's taking place. When I think back to 2006 when we launched the awards, we launched it with 20 people in a room and we paid tribute to Penny Haynes. And last year, a couple of hundred people gathered and we paid tribute to over 30 women. So I think it's important to keep recognizing. And interestingly, Simon, the more we recognize, the more people tell us they need recognition.
But it is a fact that women in sport just don't get recognition on many levels. The highest level of athletes is still struggling in terms of her male counterparts. Do you find that in South Africa as well?
It's an interesting debate that's happening globally at the moment. Where should women place themselves in this entire spectrum of sport? I think there's a great debate happening in the US about the US women's team now wanting equal pay to the men's US team. But then people are saying that they deserve it because they've won World Cup.
But that's a ludicrous story there. Why? Because they are so much better than their men's counterparts.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I mean, a million miles better.
But then it's a precedent-setting case because around the world now people are going to start getting more interested in fighting the good cause for women's sport. From a Gsport perspective, we've realized that there's not enough money for PR and marketing of women's sport, and we want to grow the brand of women's sports stars. So whoever you are, from whatever level, if you have a good story to tell, we want to help you tell that story. The awards is just one day in a year where we feel that every single day should be committed to helping women's sport.
Right.
I think women's sports stars themselves have also realized if they're not going to sing their own song, nobody's going to do it for them.
Do you think that South Africa does enough for women athletes?
We're doing better. And I think the sports minister has put a lot of pressure on us. And whenever he starts asking very tough questions, we've all got to start jumping around and making sure that we're fulfilling the mandate. I think the federations have a big duty to perform to ensure that they start having structured leagues for women, structured competitions. You find certain sporting codes, there isn't even anything that's set up for women. So the PSL is under pressure, for instance, to get a professional soccer league for women. When is that going to come about? So I think the pressure's on, but more importantly, I think there needs to be a balance of celebration, of heavy debate, but also being accepted as women by women in women's sport.
It's interesting because Banyana does get a little bit of coverage, but they largely come from an amateur background. And then you have netball coming through, and that's got a large following, and it does get some television, and it's got a great team in the Free State Crinums. They're going to be recognized. They surely must be this year.
Well, listen, we were just looking at the nominations that have come through already, and the competition is already stiff. Interesting you mentioned the Crinums because we introduced a new category this year, which is Team of the Year.
I think they might have forced you into introducing.
I think so. And the other new category is School Sports Star of the Year. Right. So every year we get new feedback, we run a review process, and I can tell you, as I've said, we get happy people, we get unhappy people, because there's so many people for decades work behind the scenes. They get no recognition, and then they walk up onto that Gsport Awards stage, and when that recognition comes through, it almost gives them a second or third wind to go on and do better for women's sport in South Africa.
And your Athlete of the Year last year, she surely must get an award this year again. Caroline Wasserman.
It's going to be tough, but what about Shane Bosman, who's just won Comrades? If you have a look at Kass Naidoo, she's fastest in the world. I have a sneaky feeling she could come back with double Olympic gold. Then we're stuck with a really tough situation. Right. But with the minister's backing, what this has done is people have started taking the Gsport Awards really seriously. I think it's important that we support government mandates and that everything that we do is in line with what they're doing. So we're delighted to have SRSA's support and the support of the public in general.
Well, I know there's 14 categories. I was actually trying to pitch a 15th category.
Oh,
that'd be bravery. Bravery. I mean, we saw those incredible visuals of her breaking down in the Comrades and finishing. That's a bravery award right there.
You know what, Simon? I'm going to take that under review for next year, definitely.
Next year.
But it's amazing because every category you bring up and you think, well, will we get nominations? Last year, within the first week, we picked up 100 public nominations. So we're very excited. We're open until the 15th of July. People can get onto gsport.co.za or nominations@gsport.co.za and motivate your candidate. Don't just send us a name, because in the end, it's the community heroes that deserve to be honoured. And if we don't know who they are, it's going to be very difficult to pitch them to the judges.
Kass Naidoo, thank you so much for joining us. Founder of Gsport, promoting a South African woman in sport.
Thank you so much.